The day it happened, the rain wouldn't stop. It fell against the old windows of Claire's house, tapping like a heartbeat she didn't want to hear. Everything about that morning felt wrong. Too still, too quiet, like the world had forgotten to breathe. She sat on the edge of her bed, the phone still in her hand, her fingers frozen around the message that shattered everything. Ethan was gone. Just like that, no warning, no goodbye. A car accident on his way home from work, the officer said. Claire's mind couldn't process the words. Gone. How could someone she loved so deeply vanish between one heartbeat and the next? For hours she didn't move. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Every memory came rushing back. The fights, the laughter, the last time she heard his voice. They hadn't spoken in 6 months. The breakup had been brutal, full of things said out of anger, not truth. She thought there would always be time to fix it. Time to say sorry. Time to start again. But there wasn't. When she finally stood, the world felt like it had changed its shape. Like the gravity that once held her steady had turned against her. She walked through the house, every corner still echoing with the ghost of his presence. His jacket still hung on the back of her chair. His favorite mug still sat by the sink. The smell of his cologne still lingered on the pillow she couldn't throw away. And that's when she saw it. Tucked beneath a pile of old photographs on the dresser. A folded piece of paper, edges worn, her name written in his handwriting. Her heart stopped. For a moment she couldn't breathe. She picked it up slowly, her hands trembling. It was his letter. But the date on it was from a week before the accident. A letter she was never meant to find while he was alive. And as she unfolded it with shaking fingers, she felt something deep inside her break open. A mixture of love, regret, and the unbearable truth that this was the last thing he ever wrote to her. The ink had faded slightly, but his handwriting was still the same. Neat, careful, the kind of writing that always made her feel like every word mattered. Her hands shook as she unfolded the letter completely. The paper was soft, worn at the creases, as if he'd held it many times before deciding whether to send it. The first line hit her like a punch to the chest. If you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to give it to you. Her throat tightened. She read the words again, slower this time, as if her heart needed a moment to catch up. Ethan's voice seemed to echo in the silence of the room. She could almost hear him, calm, hesitant, the way he used to sound when he was trying to tell her something that scared him. I know I hurt you. I said things I didn't mean. I walked away because I thought you deserved better. But the truth is, I just didn't know how to be better for you. I thought distance would help us both heal. But every day without you feels like punishment I chose for myself. Tears blurred the words. She pressed her hand over her mouth, trying to hold in the sob that escaped anyway. The sound of the rain outside grew louder, like the world was crying with her. He had written about the little things. How he missed the way she hummed when she cooked, the way she laughed before she even got to the funny part of a story. How her silence scared him more than her anger ever did. Every line was soaked in regret. And then came the part that broke her completely. I still drive by your street sometimes. I don't stop, I just watch your window light up and tell myself you're okay. I hope someday you'll forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because you deserve peace. If I could undo what I said that night, I would. You were never the mistake. I was. Claire's tears fell freely now, staining the letter like new ink. The ache in her chest was unbearable, the kind that no one prepares you for, the kind that comes from words written too late. She held the letter to her chest, whispering his name through the cracks in her voice. There were so many things she wanted to say back, so many things she thought she'd have time for. But time had betrayed them. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all the pain, she realized the cruel truth. Forgiveness meant nothing if the person who needed to hear it was already gone. The next morning, the world looked exactly the same. Gray clouds hung low, the streets were quiet, and yet something inside Claire had shifted forever. The letter lay on her nightstand, its edges curled from where she'd held it too tightly in her sleep. She hadn't meant to fall asleep clutching it, but maybe part of her was afraid she'd wake up and realize it was all a dream. By noon, she found herself standing in front of Maple and Pine Cafe, the little corner spot where she and Ethan used to meet every Sunday morning. The doorbell chimed softly as she walked in, and the faint smell of coffee beans and old wood hit her all at once. Every corner of the place whispered memories. His laugh, their arguments, their quiet moments that never needed words. She walked to their old table by the window. It was empty. For a second, she imagined him sitting there, the sunlight catching the side of his face, that familiar grin tugging at his lips as he looked up at her. Her heart clenched painfully. She reached into her bag and unfolded the letter again. The last paragraph she hadn't noticed before caught her attention this time. If someday you find this, I hope you'll go back to our cafe. Order my usual and take a seat by the window. If the light hits the glass just right, maybe you'll see me there. Not the man I was, but the one I wish I could have been. Her breath trembled as she looked up. The sunlight streamed in through the window exactly as he'd described, spilling warmth across the empty seat in front of her. For a heartbeat, she swore she saw him, the faint outline of his smile reflected in the glass. Her eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't just sadness. It was everything they'd lost, everything they'd never said, and the cruel beauty of a love that still lived in moments, not people. The waitress approached softly. "You okay, miss?" Claire nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, just remembering someone who used to sit here." As she looked outside, the rain began to fall again, soft, rhythmic, endless. She realized that some goodbyes don't happen in a single moment. Some stretch across years, carried in letters, echoes, and the spaces between words. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Claire drove in silence, her fingers gripping the steering wheel, her heart pounding as if it already knew where she was going before her mind could catch up. The road wound through the quiet outskirts of town, the place where Ethan had been laid to rest 3 years ago. She hadn't been there since the funeral. She couldn't bear it. Every time she tried, something inside her would break, and she'd turn back before even reaching the gates. But today felt different. The letter had awakened something, a pull stronger than her fear, a need to face the truth she'd run from for too long. As she stepped out, the rain softened into a mist. The graveyard stretched out before her, silent and endless. She walked slowly between the rows of headstones, each one carrying someone's unfinished story. Then she saw his name, Ethan Hale. Even after all these years, it still didn't feel real. She knelt beside his grave, her knees pressing into the damp earth. Her hands trembled as she placed the letter on the stone, the same letter he had written but never sent. The ink was smudged now, the paper wrinkled, but it carried every word that had brought her here. "Why didn't you send it, Ethan?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "You said you wanted to come back. You said you still loved me." The wind stirred, brushing through the trees almost like a sigh. For a long moment she just sat there listening, to the silence, to the rain, to the ache inside her chest. Then she noticed something carved faintly into the back of his tombstone. She leaned closer. The letters were rough, hand-etched, barely visible through the moss. It read, "For Claire, I'm sorry I couldn't stay long enough to say it in person." Her hand covered her mouth, a soft cry escaping as tears fell freely. The truth hit her. He had tried to reach her, not through a message of regret, but through a final act of love. She whispered through her tears, "You did say it, Ethan. You did." And for the first time in years she smiled, not because the pain was gone, but because the love had finally found its way home. The evening sky turned gold as Claire sat quietly beside Ethan's grave, her fingers tracing the edges of the letter one last time. The storm had cleared, leaving behind that soft silence that only comes after rain, the kind that feels like the world is finally exhaling. She watched the sunlight filter through the trees, landing gently on his name. For years she had carried the weight of unanswered questions, the pain of words never said, and the guilt of moments lost forever. But now there was something else. Peace. Not the loud, triumphant kind, but a quiet acceptance that some love stories aren't meant to end in forever. They simply change shape. She pulled out a small notebook from her bag, the one she used to write in during the nights she couldn't sleep. She tore out a page and began to write, her handwriting trembling but honest. "Dear Ethan, I forgive you. For leaving. For the silence. For the time I thought you stopped loving me. I know now that you didn't choose to go. Life chose for you. And I forgive myself too for holding on to the pain longer than I should have. You'll always be my unfinished chapter, but I've learned that some stories don't need an ending to be beautiful." She folded the paper and tucked it beneath the letter he'd written, pressing her hand over both as if sealing the years between them. The wind picked up slightly, lifting her hair, and for a fleeting moment she could almost feel his presence, like he was standing beside her, smiling the way he used to when words weren't enough. As she walked back toward her car, she looked over her shoulder one last time. The setting sun painted the sky in soft shades of pink and orange, colors that reminded her of the evenings they used to watch together. She smiled, not the kind that hides pain, but one born from release. From finally understanding that love doesn't disappear when someone leaves. It simply lingers quietly in letters never sent, in rain-soaked memories, and in hearts brave enough to forgive. When she drove away, the letter stayed behind, 2 pages resting together, whispering across time. And for the first time since he left, Claire didn't feel alone. She just felt free.